Hello, my name is Joran. Welcome to another Baldur's Gate 3 build video. In today's video, I'd like to show you my Eldritch Lightning Knight build, which will be the last Elemental Knight build that we have in the series. We'll have more, of course, Eldritch Knight builds, but this one is the last Elemental one since it's going to be focusing or utilizing the Elemental Adept Lightning and, of course, lightning damage-based attacks or spells. Alright, so for the characterization, I of course went with the Dragonborn as well. Dragonborn are really nothing special, they just have the racial speed of 30 feet per turn. You can go with any race you may prefer, it's completely up to you. High elves and high half elves are decent picks as well because they give you an additional wizard cantrip that you can use, which of course scales with your intelligence, which is what we want. For a sub-race, of course, I went with the Bronze Dragonborn. This one gives us the Lightning Breath, and it increases damage every time you gain proficiency die, so it can be a 46 at level 12. Or I believe at level 9 or level 10 it becomes a 46 already. We also gain the resistance to lightning damage, which is quite nice. Since we don't have to worry if we electrify water, we just take half damage from that then, if that happens. Now, for our class, I went with the Fighter, of course. We want to start with the Fighter. We want to get our extra attack as soon as possible. Fighter gives us the 1d10 plus Fighter level heal, which is a pretty decent heal. It's a bonus action, so it's a nice one you can use in a pinch. For the fighting style, you have two choices. If you want to go tanky, you can take defense. Considering we are using relatively low tier equipment with this, with the armor that scales with the lightning charges, it is a pretty low tier armor, although we can compensate that with equipment. You can go with defense +1. What I did, I went with dueling, because what dueling does is when we are wielding a melee weapon that is not two-handed in one hand or no weapon in the other hand, you can deal additional 2 damage with that weapon. We can carry a shield in your free hand and still gain the bonus. So basically, for example, if you're using a trident, like in my case, which is a versatile weapon, if you just carry it without a shield, it's two-handed, so this effect won't work. But if you carry a shield with it, like I am, then it will work. So we're going to be going with this. For my background, we're with the Guild Artisan. This is just my favorite background to pick. You can pick whatever background you may prefer. The Guild Artisan gives you the insight and persuasion skills, which is pretty good. I like insight, it is pretty important, and same thing with persuasion. Insight, I can think of a very important situation where you talk to Disciple Zarel, and you can get her to unlock the additional armory equipment from the Bugbear if you pass an insight check, for example. For the abilities, we're going with 14 Dexterity, 16 Constitution, 17 Intelligence, and 10 Wisdom. Now, we are an Eldritch Knight, and we are foregoing Strength because we're going to be using elixirs to boost our Strength to 21 or 27. The reason being is I wanted to have relatively high Constitution and relatively high Intelligence. I think with this character it might be important because of our naturally lower armor class, since we don't have medium or heavy armor really good choices for this. Also, it's kind of important for this character to have 14 Dexterity. Normally, I like to go with my Eldritch Knights where we go 17 Strength, 16 Intelligence, 14 Constitution, because then we can utilize all of these. I have to go like this. This is the normal Eldritch Knight setup that I use, because most of the Eldritch Knights can use, or we do use, higher tier medium and heavy armor, primarily heavy armor, right? But because this character is utilizing a pretty low tier medium armor, we kind of had to forego the strength and use elixirs instead, so that we can get a setup like this. For the skills, I went with perception and athletics. Perception is very important. It's probably the most important one. There's a lot of perception roles in the game. For example, hidden levers, hidden buttons, invisible levers, invisible buttons, objects you can move to reveal a button, stuff like that. So a very important one. Insight is great as well, but we already have this, so we don't worry about that. Survival, you can pick on one character if you want to reveal buried caches, although if you know roughly where they are, you can just dig near them, and then you will dig them up. Invitation, we don't need because we have persuasion. Animal handling history is pretty bad. They don't pop up too often, and they aren't really important. And then acrobatics, you can go with whichever one of these you may prefer. Alright, so at level 2, we unlock our action surge, and we can move on to level 3. At level 3, we begin our subclass, and here we're gonna go, of course, with the Eldritch Knight. Now, for our cantrips, we have to, of course, go with the Shocking Grasp, because it's our cantrip that we will be using. We can go with the Booming Blade, but I personally, when I'm doing these elemental Eldritch Knights, I tend to not use this one, because then you will end up just every build will be a Thunder Eldritch Knight where with sometimes casting lightning spells. So we're gonna kind of force ourselves to ignore it. You can pick it up later, but we're gonna ignore it for now. Now for the second cantrip, I usually like to go one offensive, one utility cantrip. So we have Shocking Grasp as an offensive cantrip, and then we have Friends as a utility cantrip, which is a really good one. You get advantage on charisma checks against non-hostile creatures. This spell can be cast while you're silent, and you have to be careful that if you cast this on somebody in higher difficulty modes, they might accuse you of enchanting them. But they will only accuse you of enchanting them if you are close to them when these 10 terms expire, or if you just stop concentrating on it. So make sure you leave the area. Make sure you just leave a relatively far distance and then stop concentrating so that they don't really call the guards on you, and you'll be good. For these spells, we're gonna go with the usual setup. So the shield is absolutely amazing. You need it, I would say, with every spellcaster that can have it, because extra armor class for one level 1 spell slot is really good. So basically, as a reaction, you gain 5 extra armor class, increases the chances of enemies missing you, and on top of that, you are immune to magic missile damage. Then for the last one, normally I like to pick up magic missile. Magic missile is quite great in the early game because it can guarantee you kill those low HP enemies with it instead of missing them like 4 times. Because in the early game it can happen since you only have proficiency of +2, and missing and hitting enemies is quite difficult, right? Since you generally don't have enchanted weapons and things like that, so magic missile is great for that. For the expanded spells, here you could pick up Witch Bolt immediately, although I would probably go with the Protection from Evil and Good. You won't be utilizing offensive spells that much in the early game, but you can, since we already have 17 intelligence, so it's up to you. I'm going to pick up the Protection from Evil and Good. We can pick up the Witch Bolt later. At level 4, we get an additional spell, and here we're going to pick up Witch Bolt. Since it's not in the expanded list, let's pick it up here. You could also take the Chromatic Orb. Chromatic Orb can deal lightning damage, but I prefer going with the Witch Bolt because this is actually a really good one. So what it does is you cast this on an enemy, and then if you hit them, you link yourself to them with the Lightning Bolt, and you can then recast the Witch Bolt at whichever level you cast it originally for free. Now also a funny little thing is the recast, which is free, is considered as a cantrip. So what you can do is, after the first turn, you cast this, and then if you have the Eldritch Knight War Magic, if you use the recast of the Witch Bolt, it will actually trigger your War Magic, which is going to infuse your weapon, of course, with lightning damage, if you have the ring for it, and it's going to make sure that you can attack with your melee weapon afterwards. So a pretty good Eldritch Knight cantrip right there, because of that fact that it's considered as a cantrip after the recast, not the initial cast itself. It's a spell, but I hope you understand what I mean. For first feat, we're going to go with ability proven +2 into intelligence. We're going to be increasing our intelligence as much as possible, since of course we have elixirs for our strength. Now either at this point or level 5 you can deal with anti-attack to get another +1 into intelligence, and then finally you can increase it by another +2 in the Mirror of Loss, where you can get it of course to a nice 22, so that you have quite significant and useful spell casting, so that you have higher chance of hitting, and of course enemies will have a lower chance of succeeding saving throws against their spells. At level 5 we gain our extra attack, and we don't need to replace any spells. At level 6 we gain our second feat, and here we're gonna go with the Savage Attacker. Now since we're not of course wielding a great weapon and we're not shooting, Savage Attacker is a great choice. On top of that, we will be getting lightning damage infused weapon attacks, so this is great for it since it also works for those. Basically, when you make a melee weapon attack, you roll your damage die twice and use the highest result. A really good feat for increasing your melee damage on average. At level 7 we get our War Magic feat. Now this is what I mentioned earlier. When you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack afterwards using a bonus action. Now this is absolutely, I would say, amazing with the what do you call it, the cantrip, that the Booming Blade, because it allows you to attack 3 times at level 7. Normally fighters get improved extra attack at level 11, but because of War Magic, the Eldritch Knight can do it at level 7. But unfortunately for this, we're going to be ignoring the Booming Blade, so this won't be as powerful for us as a Booming Blade would, but it's great for using Shocking Grasp, so you can get Arcane Synergy for ourselves, because Shocking Grasp does inflict a condition. Now for the level 2 spells, we don't really have any lightning spells here that we can choose from. So what you can do is, for example, a Thunder Wave is a nice one. You can pick it up because we will be going with the Vacation Wizard subclass, so that then we can cast this next to our allies to push enemies away or off of ledges and so on, or if you just want to deal damage to a big group of enemies in a radius in front of us. Then the second one, I would suggest you could pick up Darkness or any other one of these, because we're going to be replacing them the very next level, because we gain access to the expanded spell slots or spell list. So I'm going to go with the Thunder Wave in this case. You could go with Chromatic Orb on any of the other ones, but again, we'll be replacing one of these, so you'll have to pick which one you will keep, and I want to keep the Thunder Wave. Then at level 8, we get, again, one expanded spell slot list. And here, of course, we're going to go with Misty Step. Misty Step is amazing. Basically, surround yourself with a silver mist. You can teleport to unoccupied space you can see as a bonus action. Best mobility spell in the game, in my opinion. Then for the replace spell, we're going to replace the Darkness spell. And instead of it, we're going to go with the Enlarge and Reduce. I like taking this on Eldritch Knight, especially if we get the concentration advantage of concentration saving throws, which we'll be getting with the Warcaster. This will increase your damage dealt with by 1d4. You will get advantage on strength checks and saving throws if you enlarge yourself. If you reduce yourself, it's the opposite, but we don't want to cast that on ourselves. We want to just enlarge ourselves for the extra damage, which is pretty good. Some other good choices here. You could get Magic Weapon if you want to. It's not too great. It gives you +1 to damage and attack rolls. So basically enhances your weapon or enchants your weapon with +1. Mirror Image is also pretty good. Same thing with Blur. We can also pick up Dark Vision, but we'll probably get that from a scroll with the Wizard when we multiclass with a Wizard. So we'll basically be able to get all of these spells that we want with Wizard multiclass, because they can learn spells from scrolls. So we're gonna go with the Enlarge right now. And then for our third feat, we're gonna go with Warcaster. Warcaster, what it does, it gives us advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration on spells. And we can also use a reaction to cast Shocking Grasp at the target moving out of our melee range. We'll be doing that. So what we'll be doing is going to our reactions, turning off our normal reaction with the weapon, and then turning on the Shocking Grasp reaction on just use it whenever it's triggered instead of asking us. Because what this does is this will trigger, for example, our Circlet, which will give us Arcane Acuity. It will trigger our Boots, and it will make enemies lose their reaction after they're hit by it. So a really good one for a really good synergetic feat for our character. At level 9, we would get Indomitable, but we will go and multiclass right now. So we're gonna with the Wizard. For our Wizard cantrips, you have a few choices. You could pick up Booming Blade right now. You could pick up Light if you need to, although you will be at the tail end of Act 3 right now. So it's up to you. I will be taking just for the sake of it. And then for the cantrips, I would suggest taking Fireball. Fireball is nice because you can light up puddles. So that will be the use for the Lightning Bolt for us. We'll just light up barrels and things like that if you don't have, for example, Alchemist's Fire and so on. Then for the other ones, I'd like to pick up the Bone Chill as well. This is in case there is an enemy that likes to heal, or it can heal, and Bone Chill can prevent that. So we're going to be taking that for that reason. Although you can pick up something like Mage Hand or Minor Illusion, because these are decent as distractions or to use outside of combat or for preparing ambushes. Then for the spells that we have here. Now, the one I was just picking up the most is Enhanced Sleep. Out of all of these ones, they don't really synergize with our Eldritch Knight, except maybe Chromatic Orb. But what I basically do is I just pick up, let's say, Long Strider, False Life, Chromatic Orb, Conjure, Companion, or Familiar, and then just random one. And then after I level up, I just unequip all of them so I don't have the cluttered UI. And then I just leave Enhanced Sleep because Enhanced Sleep is nice because it's a ritual spell after if you cast it outside of combat. In combat, it's a spell, but outside of combat, you can cast it for free. Same thing with Long Strider. So if you don't have a Long Strider in your party, you can get it here. It's quite late at level 9, but still better late than never, right? And then for the equip spells, you can see I've learned 2 through scrolls. But for the learned spells, this is usually how I learn spells. So Haste, Lightning Bolt, and Sleep. But we have to, of course, fill up these slots if we want to level up. So we'll just do it like this. Then at level 10, we unlock our Wizard subclass, and here we're going to go with Evocation, of course. Evocation is pretty good because our Lightning Bolt and Thunder Wave can ignore our allies, well, they will not get damaged. You can go with other Wizard subclass if you prefer. For example, Divination is a decent one. You get those portent dice, which you can use to change the results of the rolls, although I believe only 2 rolls, but still, that's pretty powerful. I haven't played too much with Blade Singing, so I cannot really recommend it. I'm not sure too much about it. So we're gonna go with the Evocation. Also, a relatively good support Wizard subclass is the Transmutation, because if you use the Alchemy, if you succeed at DC 15 medicine check, you can get 2 alchemical solutions instead of 1. So for this, having proficiency in medicine is actually pretty good. But we're gonna go with evocation. Then for the spells, just pick out some random ones. It doesn't really matter. We will most likely not be equipping them. At level 11, we unlock our second level wizard spells, and here I was just picking up Blur and Mirror Image. Blur and Mirror Image are quite nice as defensive spells. If you are in a pickle, you can cast Blur and both Blur and Mirror Image on yourself, so your enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls against you, and you get extra armor class. So those would be, for example, two of the spells we would have equipped additionally. So basically, the spells I have equipped is Lightning Bolt, Haste, Hand Sleep. We can skip Long Strider. We'll just add it so we have it, and then Blur and Mirror Image. Then finally at level 12, we unlock an additional Wizard Cantrip, and here it doesn't really matter. You could just pick up Booming Blade if you want at this point. You're basically at the end game, so you could start using it. I won't, so I'm just gonna get, let's say, Mage Hand. And then for the spells, I will pick up Dark Vision, since Dragonborn don't have Dragon Vision, don't have Dark Vision by default, which is kind of unfortunate, but we're gonna be getting it now, so that we have it. And then I'll just pick up, for example, the Hold Person, since we'll have relatively high spells FDC. Hold Person will be quite nice. And then finally, for our last feat, we are of course going with the Elemental Adept Lightning. What this does is basically when we cast spells or attacks that we make, they ignore resistance to lightning damage, and in addition, whenever we deal lightning damage with a spell, it cannot deal 1, or it cannot roll a 1. So we basically prevent ourselves from dealing 1 damage with the lightning spell. For example, level 1 Witch Bolt. Alright, so that's it for the levels. I'm gonna see you in the equipment section. Alright, so here we are in the equipment section, so let's start with our headgear. Here we have, of course, probably the most used Eldritch Knight item in the game, which is the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. When you inflict a condition, you gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns. What it does is your weapon attacks the additional damage equal to the entity's spellcasting modifier. So in our case, it's gonna be a +5. I did not get the Mirror of Loss yet in this playthrough, but I do plan on getting, so that would normally be a +6, which is a pretty good damage boost to your weapon attacks. Alternatively, you could use the Lifebringer, but this is more of a honorable mention than really an item you want to use, because what it does is when the wearer gains lightning charges, they also gain 3 temporary hit points. 3 temporary hit points is not a lot. It's not really worth using this. I wish it was, for example, 3 temporary hit points that can stack up to, let's say, 5 times. That'd be pretty good, because then you can gain every turn 2, 4, 6, 8 lightning charges stacks, so that would stack up to 4 times, so 4 times 3, so that would be a lot better, but only 3 is not that great. So this is just as an honorable mention here, because that Arcane Synergy is so much more better and useful for you. For a cloak, I went with the Cloak of Displacement. This basically grants you the effects of Blur when you get your turn. The cloak activates and grants the enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that target wearer. So basically Blur cloak. Alternatively, the Cloak of Protection, armor class Senators +1, pretty important for this character because our armor is only 14. So we have 19 armor class. We would have 20 if we went with defense, or 21 if we have also the cloak equipped. But because we have dueling and don't have the cloak, it's 19. So it's not as high as, for example, some other Eldritch Knights, but it's still pretty high because we have some of the armor increases. For the armor, we're going with the Jolty Vest. You take 1 less slashing damage, and also we have Counter Shock. Whenever the wearer takes damage while having lightning charges, the attacker must succeed a dexterity saving throw or become shocked. Now what Shock does is they cannot take reactions and have disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws using dexterity. So this is pretty good. I could see this potentially being used with, for example, something like Grease or Ice, if they are shocked, of course, because they have disadvantage dexterity and they have a higher chance of slipping. But you can use this. I use this armor because it's the only real armor that synergizes with lightning charges, and it has the benefits from it. Although it's nothing too amazing, right? It's not even armor like +1, or it's kind of like +1 because it has that 1 less damage from slashing, but it's a relatively low tier armor. It's only 14 armor class. So without a shield and all of the other boosts, we would have 16 armor class at level 12, which is pretty low. That's why we also don't have any alternatives. For the gloves, I have the Sparkle Hands. On hit with an unarmed attack, the wearer gains +2 lightning charges. So this is great for monks. Lightning monks are particularly pretty nice because, of course, you can stack a lot of lightning charges with this. But because we're not a monk, we want this for the second effect, the Effective Transmitter. While imbued with lightning charges, the attacks against metal and constructs have advantage. So basically, anyone that is wearing chainmail, plate mail, and so on, you'll have advantage against, and of course against the Steel Watchers when you gain lightning charges. Alternatives we don't really have because these are the only gloves that actually synergize with lightning charges. Then for our boots, I went with the boots elemental momentum. Whenever the wearer deals acid, cold, lightning, fire, mainly lightning, and thunder damage with a spell or a cantrip, they gain momentum for 2 turns. Momentum increases your speed by 5 feet per turn remaining, so the more stacks you have, the more speed you will have, which is pretty useful. A really nice set of boots. Alternatively, we have the speedy light feet and the water sparklers. Now, I put these here because they don't actually synergize greatly with us, because the speedy light feet require you to have a dash or 2 dash. And with the Eldritch Knight without bonus action dash, it isn't too great. It generates still lightning charges, which is nice, but we need a bonus action to use it. So these are here as an honorable mention. Same thing with the water sparklers. Now, you could use them when the wearer stands in water in combat, it becomes electrified. So you could use water bottles to create water puddles and then generate lightning charges that way, or you could use the trident for it, but then you don't really have a way of generating lightning charges other than just standing in a water puddle. So in my opinion, going with the boots elemental momentum is better, because what also this allows is when you use a reaction and you cast the reaction cantrip, the shocking grasp, it will also work. It will apply both the Arcus energy and momentum to you if you hit. So also I mentioned earlier, basically I turn off my opportunity attack, and then normally the Warcaster is like this. It's turned on with Ask. I just turn the Ask off, so it activates on its own. But anyway, for the amulet, we're going with the necklace of elemental augmentation, of course. When one of your cantrips deal acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you add your spellcasting modifier to the damage dealt. So basically, our shocking grasp deals additional 5 damage whenever we hit with it, which is pretty good. Honorable mention necklace we have is the blast pendant. It does synergize with lightning, but it's kind of really bad. Basically what it does is focus electricity in your veins to strengthen your next lightning spell or cantrip. Your next lightning spell or cantrip deals additional lightning damage equal to your remaining lightning charges. On hit, all of your lightning charges are consumed. So this sounds good on paper, but here's the thing. When you get to the maximum amount of lightning charges, which is a 5, and if you attack afterwards, all of them are consumed and you deal 1d lightning damage. So this lightning blast is kind of unnecessary. Now I can see you could say, oh, it's good on wizards because you can then use 4 lightning charges to get 4 damage. That's true, but you can also just use a magic missile, which is going to stack up your lightning charges fast as well. So there's that. So you would need the staff for it, though. There's a staff that gives you 2 lightning charges or a single lightning charge whenever you deal damage with a spell or cantrip. So yeah, this kind of is pretty bad. So I don't really use it because, of course, this one is much better. For the rings, we're going with the Ring of Protection, armor class 70 plus 1. We kind of need this since we have normally low armor class. You could exchange it for something else, but I like the Ring of Protection of this character, so I went with it. And then we have the Ring of Elemental Infusion. Whenever you deal cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage with a spell or cantrip, that element infuses a weapon. So basically, when we cast Shocking Grasp as a spell, normally when we will cast it, or if we use it as a reaction, it's going to infuse our weapon with 1d4 damage for lightning. 1d4 extra lightning damage. Then for our weapons, we're going with these sparky points. Whenever wielder deals damage using this weapon, they gain 2 lightning charges. So basically, this stacks up your lightning charges quite nicely. What it does is when you have lightning charges, is you have +1 to attack rolls. You deal additional lightning damage, and I mentioned earlier, you at 5 lightning charges, you deal 1d8 extra lightning damage when you deal damage the next time. So next time you deal damage, you deal extra lightning damage, and you lose 1 charge per turn, but that's fine. Then for the alternative, you could use the charge bound Warhammer. Now keep in mind, this Warhammer does not generate lightning charges, so you would potentially need to get some of these other boots and another way to generate lightning charges if you want to. So I didn't really use this. This is a really nice weapon generally, because when it's a packed weapon, it becomes a +1 to the attacks and damage rolls, and on top of it deals extra lightning damage. So it's actually a quite nice weapon to use with Warlocks and Eldritch Knights as well. Then for the shield, we have the Real Sparky Sparks Wall. This is a quite nice shield because what it does is when you have 3 lightning charges or more, you can consume them and you release a blast of electricity that jolts nearby enemies. And basically for 3 turns, you deal 1d4 lightning damage to every single enemy in this radius, and they also cannot take reactions. So it's a pretty decent shield for dealing quite a lot of AoE in our area around you. And of course, because we have Elemental Adept Lightning, this ignores the lightning resistance. Then for the ranged weapon, we are going with the Hell Rider Longbow. Namely because we want this as a stat-stick weapon. We gain +3 to initiative and advantage on perception ability checks. This is very important for us. The second effect doesn't really matter because we won't be really using it to shoot it. But what it does is, once per turn, a creature hit by this weapon will be possibly afflicted with Fairy Fire, which is a pretty good effect. Afflicted creatures have advantage on attack rolls against them, and they cannot go invisible. For the ranged weapon alternatives, early game you could go with the Bow of Awareness for that extra initiative +1. You could also use Hunting Shortbow of Gandril's Aspiration so that you get the advantage against monstrosity type enemies, or you could even use the Dark Fire Shortbow so that you get a free haste spell once per long rest. Since we have advantage on concentration saving throws, this is going to be quite useful one for us, on top of getting resistances to fire and cold damage. And then finally, some of the elixirs. We have, of course, the Elixir of Flat Giant Strength. You would want to use this in the late game. You boost your strength to 27 so that you can deal quite a lot more damage. And then also Elixir of Hill Giant Strength, which is the early game or until late game 1 alternative, which is up to 21. Alright, so that is it for the equipment. I'll now see you in the combat showcase. Alright, so here we are the Flaming Fist barracks for Eternal Ball Showcase. Now, before combat started, I did use a haste spell on myself, and I also, of course, drank an Elixir of Hill Giant Strength. I do have the Thatcherite Vigor from the books that I read, but that's not really important. And I also have the Sweetstone features from the statue in our camp, which you can get it if you go to the Stonian Bone in the circus. But anyway, let's show a little bit of an interesting mechanic where normally if you have 2 actions and you cast Shocking Grasp to get a bonus action attack, the second action will not actually trigger your extra attack. So what's a good kind of habit to do is you want to use your extra attack first and generate some lightning charges, because we also want to showcase the lightning aura. So we're gonna do that. So let's attack this guy. Let's get our extra attack in, which I did activate very good. For a moment I thought it didn't, but we have advantage now because of our gloves, effective transmitter. Let's hit him again. And now if we use Shocking Grasp to get our Arcane Acuity, if you take a look now, we have Arcane Acuity and we have Lightning Infusion on top of 4 lightning charges, and we also gain momentum for 2 turns. Now we can take a look at the damage of the lightning Shocking Grasp. So it's a 3d8 plus 5 from our necklace. Now our weapon damage is 1d6 plus 5 from the strength modifier and dueling, so it's a 13. We got basically the maximum damage we can roll with this. But since we have Arcane Acuity now, let's hit him again. And if you take a look at the damage now, it's quite higher. It's 5 extra damage, right? So it's a 1d6 plus 5 from strength, plus 2 from dueling, plus 5 from the spellcasting modifier. If you had 22 intelligence, it would be a plus 6. So then our weapon would deal 15 to 23 damage, which is quite a decent amount. Now, since we have 6 lightning charges, if we were to attack him right now, we would deal 1d8 extra lightning damage to him. But instead, what we can do is we can use lightning aura, or we could even use the lightning breath. But let's use the lightning aura to show how this works. Now, let's get him to fail the saving throw. So now these characters are jolted, and they were all dealt 1d6 lightning damage. And then on top of that, took then they should, after every other turn, they should be taking additional 1d4 lightning damage. But it does consume our action, so we can't use it anymore. But this can be an opening in big fights where there's a lot of enemies, and you can just basically walk around to jolt them and to deal damage to them, right? If you kill the target that is next to you. Or if there's let's say a big group of them is around your cleric, you can just go next to your cleric and then jolt all of them so that they take damage on top of that as well. So basically that is it. I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe for more Baldur's Gate 3 content, and I'll see you in the next one.